Welcome back to Orange Nation, our artist of the day, Green Day, because someone asked for it, I guess. We're doing long distance dedications and requests. Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Steve, you know this one?
I do.
My whole life is a boulevard of broken dreams.
The song speaks to you?
Yes, it's not a boulevard of broken dreams for the women's basketball this season. You know what I mean?
That tease.
And you know what I mean?
Great segue as we bring in...
They're on the road to the riches.
Tim Leonard. Tim, you were in South Bend, and we had talked all week about the streak, right? 0 for 19. We saw the point spread, 14.5 points. We heard the narrative about, well, Notre Dame wasn't completely healthy the first time around. This one's going to be different. And Syracuse went there and didn't just beat them. I mean, they dominated that fourth quarter. It's tied going into the fourth. What was the difference in that final frame? Because it really seems like, again, watching it on TV, it looked like Syracuse just kind of found another gear that Notre Dame didn't have. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, it's amazing because so much of the story last year, you guys remember, was every game Syracuse was in it going into the fourth quarter. The Notre Dame game on the road last year, same deal. They hadn't won ever there. They're up by 2 in the fourth quarter going into the game last year. They lose by 7. And a lot of the games last year was they could not rebound with the best teams in the ACC. They were constantly losing the rebounding battle. Virginia Tech, who's coming into the Dome on Sunday afternoon, was an example of a team that just crushed Syracuse on the boards, and it was another close game, and it was, you look at the box score afterwards, man, if they had gotten a couple extra possessions on the glass, they maybe could have won this game. And last night, they're plus 16 on the rebounding margin against a Notre Dame team that was first in the ACC in rebound margin. And the funny thing about all of this is Isabel Verajao has not been healthy for the last 10 games, I believe it is now. And she was one of the transfer portal additions that brought size and addressed that need a little bit. 6'4" center, a grad transfer from Michigan. They're doing it without her. It's not like they have more size than Notre Dame or some of these teams that they have beat, Florida State in ACC play, but they are out-rebounding these teams. And Coach Jack often jokes with me. She'll even be willing to admit, I go to my coaches for a lot of offensive game plan, defensive game plan, but I can teach rebounding. Like, rebounding's in me, and obviously we know all the records with her as a player. So it's really cool to watch some of these players that were okay rebounders last year. Now they're just really good rebounders and learning under Coach Jack.
It's a great point you brought up about the rebounding. Not only plus 16 on the glass, but 23 second chance points to just 4 for Notre Dame. And, I laid out some of the numbers earlier in the show with, Fair had 25 points and Rice had 19, Woolley had 12. But the rebounding numbers, those three combined for, let me do quick math, 24 rebounds between
guards,
Fair, Rice,
yeah,
and Woolley. I mean, that is very impressive. So to your point, it's not just, the front court getting the job done. You got your guards not only chipping in, but Georgia Woolley with 9 boards was the second leading rebounder last night.
Yeah, and Kyra Wood, we got to give her a shout out. She had 13 rebounds in the game last night. So many games this year in the fourth quarter, I catch myself saying, another offensive rebound and a putback, and that's just what they've been doing, and Kyra's been a big part of that. It's really the offensive rebounds in particular. They had 20 O boards at home against Notre Dame, 19 offensive rebounds on the road last night, and they average about 17.5 offensive rebounds per game, which is the top mark in the ACC. And maybe I need to do some digging on this because I just have to think that height-wise, given that Verajao is not an option right now due to injury, and you hope she gets back soon, I'd have to think height-wise they are not inside the top 8 in the conference. But they're doing it by hustle plays and scrapping to the floor to get the ball. And that's the type of stuff that I think makes Coach Jack really happy about how much your team has bought in here in year 2.
And we make so much of Deasia Fair, and rightfully so. I mean, she's Paulie said once-in-a-lifetime player, and you see what she's doing in the all-time scoring list, 10th all-time, and she's going to continue to climb there. But it's not just her. I mean, she's got a supporting cast that is very talented. So, when you talk about, and I know there's a lot of basketball left this year, but when you talk about can they keep this up, next year and beyond, they obviously lose Deasia Fair, but it seems like this team is in pretty good shape. You don't know what's going to happen with the portal, but they seem to be in pretty good shape for the foreseeable future, yes?
Well, why doubt them? Because this year, they were picked to finish 9th in the league.
Right.
Again, when you're comparing size and talent to the other teams in the ACC, they still should be behind the curve.
Right.
Because it's only year 2 for Coach Jack, and we know the situation she inherited. It took a while just for them to get kind of competitive, and you bring in Alyssa Latham, that's one top 100 recruit, and they've developed her really well, and she's been a big factor this year, and they've got a solid recruiting class coming in next year. So, yeah, they will lose Deasia Fair, but the fact that they are overachieving this much speaks more to culture and the coaching staff really excelling than anything.
Yeah, no doubt. I completely agree with you. And, this is their 3rd win over a ranked opponent. And I said this last night, and you follow this team more closely than I do, and you're there for every second of every game. But I look at it as those first 2 wins were nice, and those kind of solidified them as a tournament team. But I feel like last night almost takes the expectations to a next level. Like, not only is this a tournament team, but they're in first place in the conference right now. They may be a factor down the stretch in this conference for an ACC title. They may be a factor come March. I saw the latest bracketology had them as a 5 seed.
Yeah.
Like, they could actually make some noise come March. And for me, that win last night, not that, I mean, they were already legitimate, but it kind of, I don't know, the expectations for me now have kind of taken a step forward.
Totally agree with you. It's a good way of putting it. It's a different type of win than they've had. Really, in the Coach Jack era, it's their first road-ranked win in this 2 years that Coach Jack has been here now. And Brian and I were talking a lot about this going into this stretch and going into the game last night. This is a stretch of 3 games in a row against top 20 teams that are ahead of you in the polls. 2 of them are on the road. Virginia Tech's at home on Sunday, then it's at Louisville on Thursday next week. And the fact that going into this stretch, I wouldn't say my guard was up because this team has proven everyone wrong to this point, and I've watched them up close, and I knew that last night was going to be a competitive game. I did not really see a 14-point drubbing in the fourth quarter, and it's a different type of win. And now, I heard you guys talking about it a little bit earlier, but if they were to win at home against Virginia Tech, then you're knocking off ACC preseason favorite and ACC number 2 in the preseason poll. I mean, you're a top 10 team, I think, at that point for sure when the AP poll comes out on Monday, if you win on Sunday.
Yeah, it's remarkable what she's been able to do, Felicia Leggett-Jack, in such a short period of time. Give us broad strokes what we should expect from Virginia Tech on Sunday. What can you tell us about the Hokies?
So they've been playing pretty well. It's an interesting team. Liz Kitley is the back-to-back ACC Player of the Year. She's likely going to win it for a 3rd straight season. She scored 27 or more points in 6 of her last 7 games and had 29 last night when they beat Georgia Tech. Georgia Amor is their other All-American. She's a guard, really good shooter. And the 2 of them have been veteran pieces that were a huge part of the Final Four run last year. Outside of that, Kayla King is back, who is a solid option for them, kind of their 3rd best player, maybe you could say. But then it's a lot of new faces, transfers. They had a big freshman class, so they're kind of transitioning, getting this freshman class ready for when Liz Kitley and Georgia Amor do graduate, and this will be probably their last year with the program, definitely for Kitley. But they're playing well, and Georgia Amor did have a little bit of a injury. I think she had a concussion, missed 2 games. She did return to the lineup last night, so they should be fully healthy. And again, I think it's the same type of stuff that we talk about whenever Syracuse is going against some of these ranked teams. How will they fare on the glass will be a key, and trying to slow down Kitley as much as possible, who had a big game. She had 20 and 11 against Syracuse last year.
And that's a noon tip on Sunday,
yes,
right?
Yep.
So listen, if you haven't seen this team play in person yet, come on out because, again, as Paulie mentioned, it's a special group. Enjoy it. You want to give your pitch, Paulie, for enjoy the here and now?
Yes, enjoy the now.
Enjoy the now. So come out Sunday, watch this team play.
And if you can't make it, whatever you're doing, running errands, listen to our buddy
Listen
Tim
to it on the
Miller.
radio. That's right. Pregame starts at 11:45.
He paints a beautiful picture.
Tip
He's the
time,
Bob Ross of radio.
at noon. Before we let you go, I do want to talk a little lacrosse as well. And you talk about ramping up the expectations. Gary Gate addressed the media this week, and he said he's been having a hard time during the preseason settling on a starting lineup because there's that much talent in the program right now. That is a good sign, and if you're an SU lacrosse fan, you got to be pretty excited to hear that from the head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think this time of year, before I say this, the preseason expectations are always pretty bullish, I would say, and the reports I'm hearing are just that. I mean, everyone is telling me that this team is wildly better than last year at this point. So we'll see once they actually get going here. The schedule obviously kind of eases into it, then they ramp up, and it's a really daunting schedule when you consider they're 9th in the nation, and they play 7 of the top 8 teams in the country ahead of them. So very excited. I think there's a lot of questions in the first couple games about the lineup. What are they going to do with that 3rd attack spot will be interesting because they added Christian Moulet from Lehigh, who is a terrific passer. He's also a lefty as well and was more of a passer last season for Lehigh. So you've got Owen Hiltz as a lefty, Spallina, who's kind of a distributor, and they did work him off of the X position, like behind the cage last year. And then you've got a freshman in Trey Deer, who is also a lefty. So out of the attack spot, I'm just fascinated who is going to step up. Usually in a good attack line, it's like someone's a finisher, someone's a facilitator, and they kind of had defined roles. And obviously Joey Spallina is the guy in that attack line. And going into his sophomore season, the expectations are still high for him. And then you get into the midfield transfers they've added with Sam English and Jake Stevens. How much will they play two-way midi and play on defense or be used as at the faceoff wing will be interesting. So a lot of questions throughout the first couple games, but good problems to have when you're talking about how do I figure out who we actually start because there is that much talent.
It is an exciting time to be in the here and now.
Yes.
If you're an SU fan. With,
enjoy the moment.
Football, basketball, lacrosse. There's a lot to be excited about at the moment. Tim, thanks so much for coming on. We'll be listening on Sunday as the SU women take on Virginia Tech at noon right here on ESPN Radio. We'll take a time out. We'll wrap up hour number 1 next on ESPN Radio.